Hi, and welcome to the IGA Soup.
I'm Lurkst,
And I'm Ren.
and today we'll be looking at the worst weekend of January so far.
Kind of being a bit cruel, isn't it?
Alright, fine, the first one was good. Let's go. Early Man is the latest feature-length stop-motion marvel from Aardman Animations. It's written and directed by Nick Park, the man behind the Wallace and Gromit shorts, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit and Chicken Run. This time he's telling the story of a sheltered group of Stone Age Mancunians, featuring the voices of Eddie Redmayne, Timothy Spall and Richard Ayoade, being forced from their homes by the incoming Bronze Age snobs. The only way they can keep their land is through an epic battle of the ages, a football match. So it's exactly the kind of simple, silly and wonderfully British idea we've come to expect from this studio. Unfortunately, that expectation might also count slightly against Early Man. If I'm being brutally honest, it's probably the weakest of these films. But considering the high calibre of in-house competition, that's not really as damning as it might be. It's still a really well put together film with likeable characters, excellent animation, and a lot of gentle humour throughout. Think British Flintstone shtick. The humans play into Park's usual northern sensibilities, and the animals all have standout moments, especially a couple of sequences with a messenger pigeon and a surreal scene with a deceptive duck. It'll play very well to the Shaun the Sheep audience and will likely charm parents with its football puns and sly over their heads humour. Just don't expect Chicken Run. In the weeks immediately following the events of September the 11th, 2001, a small task force of 12 US soldiers was sent into Afghanistan. The first of many to follow, it was their job to convince local warlord General Dostum and his army to help destroy their mutual enemies, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. After being trained for elite combat, the Americans were forced to adopt the fighting style of the locals, horseback combat, while the locals were interested in the Americans' firepower from the air. This is the story told by 12 Strong, the American debut for director Nikolai Futzli, starring Chris Hemsworth, Michael Shannon and Michael Pena. It's a perfectly serviceable story, but unfortunately the execution doesn't make it a particularly compelling one. The 12 in the title could easily be described as the 3 guys you recognise, plus colleagues. Despite some rote attempts at camaraderie, there's little to relate to in these paint-by-numbers 2D characters who speak only in army jock action hero cliches and can't seem to display any emotion that isn't sarcastic laddish gallows humour. The Afghan characters come off worse though. Save for their leader, probably the most interesting attempt at a character, they are nothing but cannon fodder. It's not as offensively jingoistic as it could be in this regard, but there's a naivety to the whole thing that expects us to just unquestioningly applaud the good guys and hate the bad guys just because. It's not worth your time unless you simply must get a modern war film fix. Downsizing imagines a world where a scientific breakthrough has made it possible for humans across the world to shrink to a few centimetres tall. Originally designed as a way to reduce humanity's environmental damage to the planet by literally reducing its footprint, it soon becomes a lifestyle choice for the comfortably well-off to join a new elite, a new avenue of exploitative business, and even a weapon of punishment. We follow wide-eyed Matt Damon as an everyman with a hilariously unpronounceable name as he decides to join the high life of the small folk, and it's... wow, this one's a complete mess. There are several germs of ideas jostling for attention with each other, each with their own tone and pace and style, meaning the film as a whole has no single identity. In trying to be about lots of things, it ends up being about nothing at all. It just meanders from one cutesy but ill-judged setup to the next, abandoning story threads and characters on a whim, but expecting us still to care when it brings out a big moment. In one memorable misfire in our screening, a scene that was obviously meant to be the emotional, dramatic and romantic linchpin of the film was greeted with laughter. This opposite effect is also on display in the film's attempted themes. It tries to take on capitalist elitism, but is more a critique of divorce laws. It tries to embrace refugees and multiculturalism, but features an offensive performance of an outdated Asian stereotype and shuts the audience out of any conversations that aren't in English. And it tries to champion environmental causes, but ultimately ends up suggesting that climate scientists are just batshit doom-mongering cultists. The message seems to be, we're all gonna die anyway, fuck it! There was big potential here, but I can't even muster a small amount of enthusiasm. It's the worst film I've seen this year. Avoid it, unless you have a strange desire to see Matt Damon's shrunken penis. I'll be upfront about this, I'm not the biggest Maze Runner fan. I watched the first film back in the day and found it to be fun but disposable. A film that was entertaining in the moment but fell apart with any serious attempt at analysis. and then I forgot about it. I decided to watch part 2 before wading into a trilogy ender and found Scorched Trials to be a turgid river of beige. I just didn't care about any of it. My partner in film criticism, Ren, tells me that a lot of the problems come from poor adaptation of the books.
A lot of problems come from the poor adaptation of the books.
But I want to judge the films on their own merits. In that regard, The Death Cure is a decided improvement. We're back again with former lab rat breakouts Thomas and Newt and co. Trying to rescue their friend Minho from the clutches of the evil World Catastrophe Kill Zone Department.
Wicked. Get it?
Who have been mentally torturing him in an attempt to develop the titular cure. There's some stuff about a zombie underclass uprising.
They're not zombies, you piece of cunt film!
And an entertainingly silly escape sequence with a bus, but there's really not much to recommend here for anyone who isn't seriously invested in seeing this thing end. The acting's fine, the direction is fine.
Pretty good in the action scenes, actually.
But I can't help but feel I'd rather just be watching The Hunger Games. That franchise also had themes of generational clash, but they had the sense to filter it through social commentary and class warfare. Maze Runner ultimately just feels like a kid flipping off his elders.
Join us next time
Or we'll go to the house that ghosts built.
and pull on a phantom thread.